Welcome to the Explainer. Today, we're going to decode an ancient symbol that might just be a schematic for reality itself. Seriously, we're going to look at ancient Taoist philosophy as a kind of modern science of adaptive systems, basically a user's guide to the cosmos.
Okay, so let's just jump right in with a pretty provocative idea. You've all seen the Ouroboros, right? The snake eating its own tail. We usually see it as this mystical symbol of eternity and endless cycles. But what if it's not a metaphor? What if it's a functional diagram of a self-regulating recursive system?
And that's the core shift we're exploring. We're moving from the Ouroboros as just this myth about things going around, and instead we're looking at it through the lens of modern cybernetics. We're treating it as a literal blueprint for how reality operates, how it maintains its balance, and even how it creates itself.
So how does this whole cosmic loop actually work? To get our heads around it, we need to map out its fundamental blueprint. We're going to start from the very beginning, from the void of pure potential, and build our way up to the engine that drives all of reality.
The entire system, the snake itself, is what Taoist philosophy calls the Tao. And you got to understand, this is the ultimate closed loop. It's a system where the output is always its own input because, well, there is no outside. It's both the container and the thing inside the container all at once.
So before the loop even gets going, the system exists in this state of pure, undifferentiated potential. In Taoism, this is called wuji, and it's represented by an empty circle. Think of it like an uncarved block. It could become absolutely anything, but right now, it's just everything and nothing, all at the same time.
And then a distinction is made. You've probably heard the classic text, the Tao begot one, one begot two. The unified whole of wuji fractures, and it splits into its very first dynamic polarity, taiji. And right there, that's the birth of yin and yang. That's the engine that kicks off the whole cosmic process.
So you've got this new dynamic engine running. What keeps it from just spinning out of control and into total chaos? Well, there's a master algorithm for the Ouroboros. It's a force called fan, or reversion. It's basically a super powerful negative feedback loop that makes sure the system always curves back on itself. It's the reason the snake's head always finds its tail, which maintains this incredible dynamic stability.
All right, now that we have the big picture map, let's zoom in. Let's look at the system's moving parts. You could think of them as the individual scales on the serpent's body.
So each individual part inside this giant loop has its own integrity, its own kind of potency. This is a concept called defium. And in modern systems theory, we actually have a word for this, autopoiesis. It's the ability of a system, like a single biological cell, to literally create and maintain itself. Defium is the power of a part to hold itself together while being part of the flow of the whole thing.
Now, this is where it gets really fascinating. Taoism gives us a kind of binary code for these parts. It's called the Bagua. Each of the 8 fundamental archetypes of reality is a trigram made of 3 lines. And just like computer code, it's binary. A solid yang line is like a 1, and a broken yin line is 0. Pretty cool, right?
And check this out. This ancient code maps directly onto the functions of our Ouroboros. It's brilliant. Qian, which is all yang lines, 1, 1, 1, is pure creative will. That's the head. Kun, all yin lines, 0, 0, 0, is the receptive body, the stomach. Kan is the blood, Li is the fire of digestion. You see? Each part has a very specific function and a specific binary code.
Okay, so we've got the parts, but how do they actually interact with each other? What makes them move? This is where we get to look under the hood at the engine that drives the whole system.
These interactions are all governed by a system called wuxing, or the 5 phases. Now, you might know them as the 5 elements, but it's way more accurate to think of them as 5 dynamic processes that operate in 2 fundamental feedback loops. So first up is the creative cycle, or shang. This is a positive feedback loop. Each phase generates the next one in this sequence of growth and expansion. Wood fuels fire, fire's ash creates earth, and so on and so on. This is the engine of creation, of development. But, unchecked positive feedback, that leads to collapse. So to balance everything out, there's the control cycle, or qi. This is a negative feedback loop where one phase restricts or manages another. Water puts out fire, fire melts metal, metal chops wood. This is what prevents any one part from just running away with the entire system.
And it's this constant dynamic dance between these 2 cycles, creation and control, positive and negative feedback, that creates what we call homeostasis.
It's how the entire cosmic system keeps its balance and stays within viable, life-sustaining limits. It's absolutely genius. Okay, now that we understand the system's map, its parts, and its engine, we can finally get to the most important question of all. How do you use it? This section is the user's manual for reality.
And the key principle here is Wu Wei. Now, this gets translated a lot as doing nothing, but that is completely wrong. Wu Wei is all about adaptive optimization. It's the art of frictionless action, of moving with the currents of the system, not fighting against them, so you can get the most done with the least amount of effort. There's this famous Taoist parable that just illustrates this perfectly. Butcher Ding's knife never ever gets dull. Not because it's magical, but because he doesn't just hack away at bone and muscle. He perceives the natural gaps in the structure, and he just glides his blade right through them. He works with the system, not against it. That right there is Wu Wei.
On a really personal level, you can apply this whole framework through a process called Nidan, or internal alchemy. You can think of it as a protocol for upgrading your own internal operating system. You refine your physical energy into awareness, and then you merge that awareness back into the system as a whole. You achieve full integration.
And all of this, the map, the parts, the engine, this whole user manual, it all leads to a final, incredibly profound realization about the very nature of the loop itself.
This is what we're calling the radiant chomp. That's the moment the serpent bites its own tail. And at this point of recursive closure, all the fundamental dualities we use to make sense of the world, things like cause and effect, observer and observed, self and other, they all just collapse into one.
So what's the big takeaway here? This whole framework is really a guide. It teaches you to see the entire system, to understand its parts, to use its feedback loops to stay in balance, and to act with the flow. But that final step, that's the radiant chomp. The realization that you aren't just a piece in the system. You are the system. You are the loop. So this whole framework leaves us with one final, recursive thought. You are the universe, observing and creating itself. And if that's really true, what are you going to compute next?